the live stream to YouTube, and now it worked. Awesome. All right. Thank you very much, Ashish, for resolving this problem. Okay, folks, welcome to the September issue of the Flatcar Community Call. We have prepared a number of items for you, as usual, and that's our agenda for today. First of all, like we do for every meeting, we'll say hi into the camera and then pointing out the next person to say hi, so we get an idea who joined this call in particular. Then we have a number of news items for you. Very excited about that one. We have a guest from Equinix Metal, Andy Holtzman, who will talk about Equinix Metal's use of Flatcar. We have a status update for ARM64, and we have a special guest from Equinix Metal there as well. That's Ed Vilmetti, who will share a few details and plans of Equinix Metal's ARM64 direction. Then we'll have our regular release planning as usual, and at the end, a little bit of QA and discussion. So everybody say hi. I'm gonna start, and I think I need to stop sharing in order for you to pop up in the video. So I wanna see the person who introduces themselves, and I'll pick Cyan to start. Cyan.
Hi everyone, I'm Cyan. I work on the Flatcar, maintaining the releases and looking over the release stuff, and I'll be like hosting the release planning as well. And I pick Jeremy.
Oh no, audio just began to function. I've missed completely what this Jeremy, I assume. Nope,
yeah, that's
wrong.
Me. Sorry. Hi, so I'm Jeremy. I'm a new member on the Flatcar team. I've been involved for the last couple of months. I worked on the C group V2 integration, and now I'm working on cluster API for Flatcar. I picked Mathieu.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Mathieu, working in the Flatcar team. Working in the Flatcar team, currently working on the ignition upgrade, and also I focus on testing the release. So I pick Kai.
Hello, I'm Kai, also part of the team, and I'm mainly working on build system things and some debugging stuff. I pick William.
Good evening, everyone. William here from the Flatcar team, mostly focusing on ARM64 concerns, some engineering, some all over the place. Ed, let's hear from you.
I'm Ed Vilmetti. I'm in the Eastern time zone, so it's 11:35 here. I am at Equinix Metal, where I work primarily in our partner team on open source efforts, of which Kinfolk falls. And in the most recent past, I was also essentially a community lead for the Works on ARM project, which focuses on ARM64 support for projects porting their stuff to that chip and instruction set. With that, I will drop it over to Jeremy Tanner.
Excellent. Jeremy Tanner. Functioning mostly as Andy and Ed's emotional support Texan.
Pick the next one, Jeremy.
Jeremy, pick the next.
But also unmute yourself before you do.
Did Andy go already? Andy then.
Thanks, Jeremy. I'm Andy. I'm with Equinix Metal. Mostly I help manage our Kubernetes clusters, which all run on Flatcar. And yeah, just do that in all of our different Equinix data centers across the world. I'm going to pick the other Andy.
Hey everyone. I am one of the program managers at Microsoft that came from the Kinfolk acquisition. So I work with a lot of the engineering folks on this team, helping them with I guess, program management. And as soon as I work out what that means, I'll let you all know. I will hand over to Aniruddha.
Hi everyone, I am here the open source contributor. I am working mostly on the packages these days, and I would like to call George Castro.
Hey everyone, just fan of Flatcar, internet random. Just listening in. Who hasn't gone yet?
I think Engen didn't yet.
Okay, go ahead, Engen.
Yeah, thanks. It reminds me of the sport time when I'm choose the last one, so traumas get awake. But yeah, my name is Engin Divi. I'm working for the Schwarz Group, and we're using Flatcar for our infrastructure in Kubernetes and also for our on-prem stuff. So I'm very interested in this. So thanks. And I choose nobody. I think Zayan, did you already?
I already went. Yeah.
Okay,
over to Tilo.
Thank you, folks. Yeah, I'm Tilo. I'm the manager at the what used to be the Kinvolk operating system and security team, and we're now the Flatcar maintainers, and we're working for Microsoft. Thanks everybody for introducing themselves. I really like how this meeting is growing, because this is the first time we have 2 name clashes. We have 2 Andys and 2 Jeremys. This is amazing. All right, I'm gonna share my screen, and then we can continue. That brings us to our news sections. And we have plenty of news for you. The first news is, back when Flatcar was a single vendor open source project, we didn't just do the community images. We also had some special extras in what we call the pro images, the sources of which were always free. So you could always rebuild those with the special extras. But the actual images, the vended images, we made available to subscription customers. Now those features are coming to the community images. There won't be any pros in the long-term future, at least not pros that we will provide. And we're adding those features to the regular images. And those features include GPU support on Azure. If you deploy Flatcar on Azure, you will be able to make use of GPUs on GPU instances right away, and EKS support for Amazon. And there's also GPU support in Amazon images in alpha. And we expect this to hit beta and stable soon. Also, there's this long-term distribution that we maintain for over a year. And that has a special something compiled in, which is FIPS kernel features that are activated by default. And those are going to the regular community images as well. I hope you really like it. Let us know how you feel about that. And also to emphasize the past as a single vendor open source product and our future as a fully community focused distribution. We're moving out of the Kinvolk organization in GitHub and in our docs portal, and we're moving into our own top level Flatcar Linux org. And giving the mic to Andy, who wants to present our survey.
Thank you, Tilo. Yeah, so we put out a few weeks ago a request to folks in the community to respond to us a survey just to find out a bit more about how people using Flatcar, what they're doing with it, and also kind of what direction they'd like to see things go in. So do you want to just pop up the slide here, which is just to give you some idea of who responded. So we had 28 respondents. So I think it's, that's enough to give us some meaningful numbers and some meaningful input. It's, it is a relatively small for a survey, I guess. So, we'd ideally want to be kind of in the hundreds to get, really statistically significant numbers. So take, everything here is with a little bit of a pinch of salt, given the law of small numbers. But I do think there's still conclusions that we can draw from it. The nice thing I liked about it was just the variety of uses that we saw. So really, people on every cloud, every on-prem environment, deploying for production, deploying for dev test, and also every size. So, we had a couple of folks with running, really large clusters over 1,000 nodes, quite a few the small cluster sizes and everything in between. So, I really like the mix of input that we got. Next slide. And you're going to have to keep up with me as I go through the bullets here. We put out actually a blog post yesterday summarizing the kind of key findings as what we call 7 fun facts. And the first of these is, if you look at what people are deploying, it's 82% are deploying Kubernetes. There was a relatively small number of folks deploying just Docker containers, and that pretty much was it. We asked for a few other options, things like Mesos, things like non-Docker containers, and they all had 0. So it really is a question of Kubernetes and a little bit of unorchestrated Docker, which I think is what we would expect. We did ask people what they used to deploy Kubernetes, if they were using it, and that was all over the place. A lot of different installers, different distros, but the most popular one by far was kubeadm, which was mentioned by 25% of folks. So, and that's in line with things that we're focusing on to try and integrate Flatcar with upstream Kubernetes tooling, things like Cluster API as well. Okay, if you looked at the respondents to, in that previous slide, I actually showed, who were on which different clouds. And if you separate that out into which of those are cloud, which are on-prem, you actually had, a lot of cloud, probably about 75% of those answers are people saying yes, they're deploying to cloud, but also it was about 60% who are deploying on-prem, and there's a big overlap. So is a lot of folks doing hybrid with some in the cloud and some on-prem. We asked how people were updating, and more than 6 out of 10 are doing some kind of automatic updating, whether that's most of those are just pulling from the public update server. There's a small number that deployed their own instance of Nebraska, and a few that are using a managed Nebraska instance that we can provide. So that leaves 37% who are just updating based on pulling new images and packaging them up and making them available, and basically having repaving nodes completely is that strategy. We did ask people what the reasons that they had for deploying Flatcar, how important different things were to them, and this was a question where we asked on a scale of 1 to 5, basically how important was it each of these things to you. The security and manageability are the 2 things that came out top. Whether that's, and in the blog post you'll see I cut that in 2 ways, both looking at how many people said this was something that's somewhat or very important to them, so kind of filtering on the 4s and 5s, but also if you just look at kind of the weighted responses and however you cut it, that those are the 2 really key things that come up. So no real surprise. We think those are big benefits, but it's always good to kind of hear that back from the users. This was interesting. If you actually looked at, and I'm not sure I can exactly say this is the question, right? So the question was in that survey was, how important is it to you? Is seamless upgrade from CoreOS to you? And so I took it that anyone that said that was something that was important to them, it's because they're running CoreOS and they're upgrading to Flatcar. People who said, well, it's not important at all, I assume that then it's not a CoreOS migration strategy. So it actually came out at like 50-50. So, and I think again that kind of accords with what we see. I think if you'd done this 18 months ago, it would have been, almost everyone would have said it's really important that we're able to upgrade from CoreOS. But now, we're some way down the path in terms of CoreOS being end of life, and a whole load of new projects have started up since then, and people are adopting Flatcar just because it's the best tool for the job and independent of the CoreOS history. So I like that, because this shows that the project has an ongoing future, and because people are adopting it for what it is and not just because it's a CoreOS replacement. And we asked people, would you recommend Flatcar to a trusted friend or colleague? For those who don't know, this is what's called the NPS question. So Net Promoter Score. So you take the percentage of people that rate 9 or 10, and you subtract from that the percentage of people that rate 6 or below, and that is your Net Promoter Score. Ranges from -100 to +100, and 71.4, which is where we ended up, is it's a truly exceptional NPS. Anything kind of in the positive range is good. Anything above 30 generally is considered to be quite good. So 71 is a very positive rating, and be hard to keep it up there, but we'll do what we can to do so. And go on to the next slide, Thilo. So there were several questions where we just asked for free-form comments, like what's your general impression of Flatcar, and what other things would you like to see us work on, and things like that. And this is just a sampling, but I think a pretty fair sampling of the kind of things that people were saying, and overwhelmingly positive comments that about both kind of the progress that they've seen in Flatcar since we kind of took over from CoreOS, that it's better maintained, documented, and supported. We appreciate the kind comments. I mean, when you're working on an open source project, having folks tell you that they love you and the great work, the team really appreciates that. I think my personal favorite is, I think it's the best thing since /proc. So we'll leave this slide at that point. This is a community call. What we do. The point of doing the survey and having these calls is to be transparent and open as well, right? So I'm not going to just cherry pick the positive comments. I mean, there definitely were a few things that came up where people had asks and things we weren't addressing. But I would say the most common comment, the thing that really came up several times is when we ask about what future features you would like to see, is don't break it, right? It's good as it is. Sure, do whatever development you need to, but don't change it what it is right now because it's perfect right now. So now I don't necessarily believe it's perfect right now, but people like how it works and they don't want that changing. So some things that came up, and most of these were probably mentioned like maybe once or at most twice. But we definitely hear some of these as well with other folks we talk to. One is Raspberry Pi support, and I think it's possible to get Flatcar running on a Raspberry Pi, but it's not well documented. We actually raised an issue around this recently, so we have followed up on that. Someone said, please make release notes roll up all the changes like compared to the last stable release, and that's something that we have recently changed with the public release notes. So that's already addressed. As you'd expect, a lot of questions from people, or maybe just kind of people wanting to wait and see what happens, right? Kinvolk was the company behind Flatcar. It's been acquired by Microsoft. What happens next? This comment about, well, CoreOS got acquired by Red Hat and they got acquired by IBM, and now Flatcar goes to Microsoft. So does this mean we get another community fork? That totally understand those questions, and all we can do in response to those is to do what we are doing, which is be open and transparent, share roadmaps, share what we're doing, share where the project's going, encourage people to participate, and I think that will continue to let our actions speak louder than words in terms of how we respond to those kind of questions. A couple of questions around cloud config and Ignition. Yes, Ignition has a different version from the very latest one, and I think someone mentioned earlier their work on the team, they're working on that. Cloud config being the real one, yeah, I can understand the driver for that. There are big questions about that though, because full cloud config is a Python tool. We don't ship Python by default. It would blow significantly the distro. So that's kind of a bigger question in that. Always people want to see things more and faster. Get to more GitHub issues, get to them faster, more frequent kernel updates. I think we're doing pretty well keeping up, but we can always do more and move faster. And then increase integration with AWS services. And clearly AWS is one of the main deployment targets for Flatcar for a lot of folks. And some of those we have been working on. So the Pro features for AWS are actually now going to be making it into community, and you'll see I think more things there as well. So yes, worried by Microsoft. Yes, I'm paid to worry about Azure, but we're also very focused on Flatcar as a community project, and the community works in all sorts of different cloud environments, and that is not going to change.
Awesome, that was a great sum up. Thank you very much, Andy. And this is time for Andy Holzman's part on the use of Flatcar at Equinix Metal. So I have the slide here which says hand over to the other Andy. I'm going to stop sharing and invite Andy to share his screen.
Okay, so let's see if I can do this correctly. There it is. Do you guys see my slides?
Yeah, that works.
Great. Cool. So, I mean, it's great to know that we fall into all those, top 5 or 6 use cases. We're using kubeadm to deploy Kubernetes. We run our own data centers. We're really happy with it. But, kernel updates are fun. This is just a little bit of where we started a little over a year ago, and then what led to us adopting Flatcar, kind of, I would say, out of a business case, or really needing to be able to scale rapidly. So we started with Ubuntu. And we started on 1804 because we started working on this in March of 2020. So 1804 was the stable. We upgraded to 2004, which took 5 whole days to upgrade all of our Ansible and things to that nature. We already had a bunch of drift getting created through apt-get update in the Ansible. New packages, just all over the place. And then so Ubuntu does a really good job, I think, of staying relatively up to date, right? You're going to get a pretty modern Python. You're going to get a modern kernel. And if not the latest, Canonical does do a pretty good job of patching your kernel. So you're not it's not as bad as Red Hat patches, but it's definitely not as quick as, other patches in the community. So I think if you look at the K8s community in general, Ubuntu is really popular. Kops shipped on Ubuntu for the longest time by default. Many cluster API packages or options will use Ubuntu as their base image. The default docs for all of this, for most of the K8s community, is how to set up on Ubuntu. It's pretty good. It's easy to staff for. If people walk in on day 1 and we tell them we're running Ubuntu, oh, okay, I know, at least I know I can hit Ubuntu questions or Stack Overflow. And, you know, it is pretty good. Like, it's hard to fault someone because, like, setting up something else might take more work, whereas Ubuntu ships like a cloud image, a Docker image, metal ISOs, self-installers, net installers, all these other things. Like, Canonical does a really good job of making themselves accessible to people for where they're at or what they already know. So, like, but why did we stop? The answer is drift, right? Drift equals risk. It equals tech debt. Eventually, we're going to have to start version pinning in our Ansible to get the right version of Python for this obscure Ansible module, or just all these other things. And then just different patch levels for CVEs. Just like, I don't know how many people have been through different iterations of Puppet Chef or Ansible, but eventually you do this on things like CentOS or Ubuntu. And then that creates a lot of backlog support for the OS. Like, have we taken the latest 2004 update? Should we go to 2104? Should we try 20.10? Right? Questions like that. And then being a general purpose operating system, we have a larger attack surface, and all of our nodes run on the edge. Just kind of like, pardon me, due to the nature of Equinix Metal's network topology and how we support like customer instances and our instances, like we're just, our nodes are on the edge. And then, like, what happens when an upgrade goes poorly? Because, like, you have two choices when you're looking at upgrades, right? Do you wipe and reinstall, or do you try to do an upgrade in place? And with Ubuntu, there's not really a revert path, right? Like, so ultimately, it just creates a huge risk level for us, given the goals that we had and still have as like the purpose of my team, which is to manage Kubernetes clusters consistently in, at this point, over 50 data centers. Is this updating? Sorry, it feels like it's lagging to me.
It still says Ubuntu created a huge risk level. Ah, there we are.
So, Flatcar Linux to the rescue, right? These are not built-in slide transitions. This is default bugs. So why did we switch? Consistent installation, you know, avoiding Ubuntu installations that somehow call an apt update in the process is really hard. So when I say consistent, I'm talking about like system level packages. Upgrade and reverting is supported and like built into the design. Great community support. I think it was the latest stable is kind of like was a key indicator of this, in my opinion, where there was that issue with Cilium trying to be controlled by network manager, and like it would just kind of make your pod networking fall over. And arguably that's not really Flatcar's problem because they're providing an operating system, and whatever I put on the operating system is my concern. But like within less than 24 hours, you know, Flatcar threw us a bone and released a patch version that added the necessary network manager config to not support or like not try to control the Cilium network, which is great. It's specialized to containers. It has a smaller attack surface. My principal engineer made me do it. And then Nebraska updates are awesome. So yeah, I mean, when I say our principal made us do it, she was at AKS, and that is all run on Flatcar. And so like she already had this sense of the value it would bring to us. And she just like over the course of a week brought all of the Ansible we needed, helped us just do a massive conversion. And so like within a week, we started rolling Flatcar. So now it's trivial for us to test and upgrade. I don't say this jokingly. My director will be bored in one of his meetings and like try a new upgrade by downloading it straight from Flatcar and provision some nodes to see if it's working, see if we're ready to take the update or not. Or we can also just, use Nebraska and change the channel for a Canary and see how that goes. Like the options for us to test upgrades is pretty awesome. It has a revert path. So like even if we try to commit to a new version and it fails, we're not stuck somewhere in limbo of having a node down. It automatically reverts. It gives us consistent versioning for all components from the kernel up. That's huge for us. To reduce cognitive load. I think that one's a little bit more amorphous to describe, but because Flatcar just has less on it, I don't think about who has installed MTR on a host or who has installed traceroute on the host. We just use the toolbox container. And then from there, you assume you have nothing and then you work with it. So like when it comes to debugging potential issues in production or whatever, like there's not that awkward moment in an incident where someone's looking for tooling that isn't there. They can kind of assume it isn't there and they have to use the debug container. And I don't know what people were complaining about with Ignition. I really like it over Cloud Init. I think the way it does the first time install to manage different components is great. It mitigates risk for us. And then it sets up a pretty small team to manage multi-cluster Kubernetes, right? So, I don't really follow a lot of the like CNCF statistics, and I'm not sure how many people are running like 1 to 5 clusters, 5 to 10, 10 to 100, but we're definitely in that 10 to 100 scale, and we manage that with 4 engineers. And I think a large part of that is due to the fact that we don't have to worry about the operating system. And mostly it liberates us. So like I was saying, we're not, I've spent a lot of my career managing either VMware, CentOS, or Ubuntu. And that does, like, I haven't really had an OS related backlog ticket other than to test and upgrade. So like that's super cool, I think. So do we do Q&A? I wasn't sure.
Folks, anyone, any questions for Andy?
Great.
Any personal wish list you would like to mention?
A wish list. Yeah, so we use Containerd, not Dockerd or the Docker shim, and right now Toolbox is broken. If you could unbroke it, that'd be cool. Yeah, because like I think it used to work with run C, and then in later iterations it became a wrapper script around Docker. And so like a wish list item would be like if you could, like, if NerdCuddle could be installed by default, that would be cool, or just like better support in general around Containerd. So because yeah, we don't need to talk about any sort of Docker related issues, but we switched to Containerd because that's what most of the Kate's community is doing. And then Toolbox doesn't work on some of my hosts, which has been fun. So I don't see your name, but the internet random person who joined, I see your hands up.
Awesome, thanks. Do you have, obviously it's kind of too early to tell, but do you have any comments on obviously, you know, if you're moving from 1804 to 2004, there's a time where you say, okay, it's time to move major versions of the distro to moving to we're going to have a slow rolling LTS mindset. Or like, are you planning to like reprovision at a certain point to make that clean, or just going for it?
You mean from an Ubuntu perspective, or like how we transition?
From a Flatcar perspective, like
Sure.
You know, in the past you probably said, okay, major LTS upgrades coming. Like, are you trying to figure out ways to mitigate the kind of slower trickle that you'll get over time on being, say, the LTS channel? Or I guess what I meant to say, fixed release to a rolling release. Have you thought about that?
Yeah, no. And so like in our architecture, we have, so one of the things that we do is we give individual teams their own clusters. And that comes from the fact that the other guy who built this system with we did do multi-tenant clusters before, and those come with their own issues. And so we, out of that, and then also just kind of the nature of our business model, we've like if a particular team needs a cluster, we give them a cluster. What that gives us is we have different blast radius of clusters. Like we have a cluster that runs our API. So like that's a lot slower to receive updates. We don't really mess around with that. And then we have like a shared cluster. We also have staging clusters. And then we just have like these edge clusters that are in all of our data centers. Well, the edge clusters in our data centers, some of those data centers no longer have customers. So like we can yeet upgrades in there all we want all day, every day. And so I would say that like we've kind of adopted both, where for lower blast radius clusters, we are either moving the Nebraska pin on the channel that cluster is subscribed to more frequently, or when we're getting new hardware, because we've been in a growth phase post Equinix acquisition of like, we just have a lot of data centers. If we have 5 days before a handover is due, we might try to do an upgrade then. And so we might go to the next part of a stable versus LTS there. And if it works, we're kind of just sticking with it. Because like one of the biggest things in at least operating system management that really gets you stuck is when you actively make that choice to sit on a version and then, oh, there's a new Python version we have to pin. Oh, there's a new netcat version that does weird eBPF things that this old version doesn't support. So now we have to pin netcat, or whatever the case may be. Like everyone on the team kind of agrees that we've been in these situations where you hold yourself back intentionally, and then when it comes time to do upgrades, it's like 2 senior engineers in a dark room for 2 weeks who like either they just try to upgrade all at once or they go through a lot of iterations. So like we've tried to marry both of those, where like our API cluster is still running like Kate's 18 with what was the Flatcar a year ago stable release, and we're actively working on upgrading that now. But like we're not worried about any of the rest of our platform components breaking, because we have, after that one was built, we've been upgrading external DNS, we've been upgrading Cilium, we've been upgrading Kubernetes. And so like we're confident we can run our platform and our stack, but we have kept this one high blast radius cluster very stable. I think that answers your question.
It did, thanks.
Okay, cool. That's just people discussing the issue that I asked if we could fix toolbox in the chat. Anyone else? Great. I think I will hand it back over then.
Thank you so much, Andy. That was a great presentation. Always like hearing about the use cases. Now we're coming to our next section, and that is a status update on ARM64, which in today's case is pretty significant. Handing over to William.
Yes. Good afternoon, good morning, folks. We got some very good news on the ARM64 front this month. We made tons of progress on the ARM64 test failures. In fact, we're down to just 2 of them left. One failing test is related to Calico, and it is a result of upstream not providing ARM64 compatible images. As soon as they do, we'll ship it. The other test is related to us shipping an old version of Polkit, which depends on a version of SpiderMonkey, which is entirely broken on ARM64. As part of bumping Polkit to its current stable release, we're also applying a patch set which lets us use duct tape instead of SpiderMonkey, and this neatly resolves the ARM64 issues. It also lets us ship slightly smaller releases, but it's kind of a wash. As soon as we resolve this Polkit issue, we'll be transitioning ARM64 to beta with the next major beta release, and then to stable after that. We'll have a more firm time frame for those steps in a future community call. And then on this slide, there's referenced GitHub issues and pull requests related to the outstanding tests that still need to be resolved. Next slide, please, Thilo. Yes, so I had another slide here that I last minute unchecked skip on, but basically, as always, you can catch me lurking in Matrix and Libera chat in the Flatcar channel. Please feel free to reach out if you got any questions about Flatcar on ARM64 or you want to experiment with it, play with it. And that's all for me this month. And with that, I'd like to hand things over to Ed from Equinix to talk about works on ARM.
Thank you, William. Do a quick sound check here.
You sound good from over here.
Okay, so thanks, Thilo, for inviting me. I should say, meine liebe Damen und Herren. I'm very glad to be here. I was able to be in Berlin for the conference there in 2019, and met some of you there, which was great. So I want to talk about the Worksite ARM project and the process of getting access to server class ARM hardware, and also talk a little bit about Equinix Metal's plans for same. So if I can share screen and go to here. All right. So I'm screen sharing. Trying to screen share. Let's get this right.
We can see your browser window. You're sharing something.
Yeah, I'm sharing something. I just need to hide the video window. Okay, so this repository is the Works on ARM Equinix Metal ARM64 cluster. It is a collection of requests that people from the community have made to the Works on ARM project over the past 4 or so years. So if you go into issues here, you'll see 260 closed issues of a whole bunch of projects that have mostly have gotten support from the Works on ARM project. You'll recognize Linux Kit, you'll recognize languages like OCaml, the Google gvisor project, Kubeflow. I will just see if Flatcar is in here, just because I can't honestly remember. No, so the Works on ARM project, the idea is it's funded by ARM, hosted at Equinix Metal, and we have a cluster of machines. We're now in our 3rd generation of machines that are server class. The current generation is Ampere Ultra equipment from Ampere Computing. They use the Neoverse cores that are the same cores as the AWS Graviton 2 cores, variously configured as 80 or 160 core systems. So think of it as take a Raspberry Pi and sort of scale up about, scale out 20-fold or 40-fold, and scale up about 2-fold in terms of processor, 2 to 3-fold in terms of processor speed, and you have a very interesting system. So there's a cluster of systems. There's about on the order of about 80 machines. Requests for access to systems. You basically look at the issue list and you open up a new issue. and it gives you a request access form, and you get started and you fill out a form with what you're looking for and why you want it, how you'll be using it, etc. So this is managed primarily by ARM itself. The equipment, as I say, is 3rd generation. Current generation is Ampere Ultra. Previous generation is Ampere EMAG, which is the XGene 3, if you're following along in historical terms. Again, server class about half as fast as the Ultras, fewer cores, but still a modern machine. And then the oldest systems are the originally Cavium and then Marvell Thunder X systems. Those are completely obsolete in the sense that they have 96 very slow cores dating from 2016. They're good for testing for race conditions is the primary use, because lots and lots of slow cores means that you have ever so slightly greater chance of things happening not in the order that you expected it to. The site I'm showing right now is worksitearm.com, which has now a long piece of the developer.arm.com website. The program has expanded since we started to have offerings from AWS, which is their Graviton, Equinix Metal, which is the icon here, Oracle Cloud, which is using Ampere Ultra instances for their free tier, and the open source lab, which is hosted, I believe, still at Oregon State University, which has a cluster of equipment there. There's a bunch of blogs that I wrote over the past couple of years, and with features on VMware and Nixos and Canonical and Kinfolk on ARM talking about Locomotive. And we have had quite a bit of fun testing out new equipment, testing out new software. My most fun of all is, I'll send it back to just speaker mode. My most fun of all is opening bug reports. The thing that I love to do the most is take a piece of working software and run it on a new architecture. It could be any new architecture. It could be ARM v7, which is 32-bit. It could be ARM 64. It could be RISC-V, you name it. Take something that's supposed to work, port it to a new machine. Something inevitably blows up if you're the first person in. You find the proximate component that has blown up, that is the first thing to fail. You open up a bug report in the repo, you provide a reproducer because you just caused it to fail, and then lather, rinse, repeat until the platform works. And so I'm starting down, without saying that this is an official Equinix Metal project, I'm starting down the long journey of RISC-V right now. And I have one of these. Let's see if I can do this without causing everything to fall apart. On my bench, I have a RISC-V Sci-Fi Unmatched. You can see to my side there, and looking for operating system support for that device. It's a long road. Most of the languages are done, but getting the thing to boot is a challenge. So anyway, that's my update on the ARM front. We do have productization plans for the Ultra, so I'm happy to talk about that offline. But just generally, any questions would be welcome.
Thank you so much. This is a great resource for, I believe, any open source project to onboard their conversion, to get hardware for their conversion to ARM. So thanks for elaborating. And I see you like a good challenge, like ARM has become boring and now you're in the RISC world. That's amazing. All right. So let me find the right.
Boring is good.
All right, which brings us to our last but also very significant section, which is the release planning. We made a few changes here as well because the release plannings before felt a little bit like we're wrapping up stuff that was basically ready already. So we are extending this a little, even though it's pretty late today. So that's the premiere today. We're planning not just the next release, which will be coming in the next week, but also the release after that. So folks still have some opportunity to bring in changes and PRs over the next days, since we're not just wrapping up things. I'll hand over to Cyan for the release planning.
Thanks, Edo. So I'll share my screen. Yes. Is it visible?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so with the, as Thilo mentioned, that we migrated the repos from the Kinfolk org to the Flatcar Linux org. So with that, we have a new destination as well. So we have moved the project code into the Flatcar Linux. So you might not see the previous releases, but yeah, this is a new address for the Flatcar release planning that we do. Also, as Thilo mentioned, we have so previously we were doing we usually do a release and then the next week we take the release planning meeting, and it was feeling like we are wrapping up things and then doing the release planning. So we have introduced, the cadence will remain the same of 2 weeks, but we will be doing one release ahead, plan ahead, and this is the first time. So and we will gradually improve with time, like with the planning thing. But yeah, so going ahead, like folks who are new, we have primarily a few boards here. We have the plan board, we have in progress, we have ready to review, and then we have the ready to release. And this is the next one, which would be happening, the release happening on 20th of September, tentative date, and then we have the 4th of October release. So we usually add plan through the items, and we add all the items that we have in the package upgrades into the to-do list, and we update the PR links and stuff, and how the status goes. If things are moving at a slower pace and we are hitting blockers, we usually move it to this board where we track the long-term or the blocked items. Cool. So giving the state of the next release, so we are wrapping up with, we did a minor update to Mantle. We did a cutout new release to Mantle, and we would be shipping in the next release. And then we have the OpenSSH PR, OpenSSH getting updated, Nettle getting updated, and then ZenStore. Bin-Utis was something which we were stuck on the Gen 2 upstream, so that got some updates. So we will be shipping that as well to the next one. And IP tables is almost towards the finish line. We have and there were some hiccups, but it's all resolved. So it will be shipping up with the new backend, the NF tables backend. So yeah. So William, do you want to share the update about the poll kit on how things are, and will we able to ship it in the next release? Do you think that the PR would get merged?
I mean, there's not a whole lot more to share than what's in the pull request, but basically it's done. It works. It's just a matter of kind of I made a couple mistakes when I was putting the pull request together, and I just have to kind of split it up a little bit. Some of the stuff belongs in portage stable. I put everything into CoreOS overlay, so it's just kind of a matter of every time I have to change the commit, I end up needing to pretty much blow away the whole chroot and source and start from zero, because once things are emerged, it's a lot difficult to it's a lot more difficult to say, let me transitively unemerge this entire dependency tree. So it's just kind of a time-consuming process, but it's I think I have a build running right now. I'm pretty confident that we can get this in for the next release.
Great. So, okay, then I think then we are looking good with the next release for the next week. And folks, we did like the migration thing. So I hope we have all the packages and the PRs in. So do check it once. And as you see here, we have like a few of the other fixes that will be getting merged for the next one. To give an insight, we are also hoping to merge the system D249 into the next release, but but it's a major jump. Like the current one is 247, and we are skipping 248 because 249 is already out there, and we are doing a bump. The PR is still in a draft mode, but trying hard to get it merged by the end of the week. So let's see. Let's keep the fingers across. So. Yeah, and folks, are you working on anything else that you think is missing out here? Or if community folks want to show us any issues that needs immediate attention for the next release. Okay, so I think we are good with the current release for the next one. Okay, moving ahead for the 4th of October release, we have a couple of the major bumps, like we bump to Go 1.17. We have Vim is not Vim is released, but the Gentoo is not updated. So just that's the reason I have the question mark. So these are the few packages. Then we have the Util Linux released as well. So that also planning to update into the next one. Any other packages, team, do you think we need to add it into the planning for the 4th October release? Do remember, like this would be open, like you can always ping the team on talking to the community in general. Like if you have any issues, you can always or any suggestion, you can always ping us on the matrix channel, and we'll be accommodating it. But any package that you think would need a major upgrade?
Since the impact of the toolbox issues feels pretty severe to me, maybe we even want to pick that up or not, depending on availability of folks. But having the toolbox not work on an operating system that doesn't ship packages seems like a hindrance. Thanks to Andy again for pointing that out. I think that's an important one.
Right. So yeah. So in that case, so we can create an issue. The one that Kai mentioned would need to create an issue, and something I would like to reach out to the current team, Flatcar maintainers, is that you can, like, when you are trying to create a PR, you can directly add the project and the basically are they in a plan stage or ready to review stage. So they get automatically added here. So that is something you can add it to the flow. Yeah, so so anyways, folks, keep a lookout on this. Something I would like to discuss, we have started doing discussions, and one of the focus for the next probably towards the end of September would be to bring some automation to the whole release pipeline. We have an open discussion out there, so it's scoping the things that we need. And the reason, like, we are not adding, like, as Tila mentioned, like there would be stuff team would be working on. So this is one of the thing. So not pushing a lot of things into the release, but release automating the whole release right now. A bunch of it is, I would say, is manual. So we would be trying to get more automation into there. So if you have any thoughts, go through it. It's there on the Flatcar repo itself. So please go through it, drop in your suggestions, like, and yeah. And also in general, like if you have any discussions that you would like to have, this is an open board. So feel free to drop in your anything, ideas or questions that you have into the GitHub discussions. I think we are good from that side. What do you think?
Awesome. Those are great news. Thank you, Sayang.
Okay, I need to stop sharing.
Thanks. All right. We're almost at the end, and that's our usual call to action for you folks. If you haven't been considering committing to Flatcar or jumping into our other community rumbles yet, that's your opportunity. We have a number of ways to be contacted. The GitHub repo is the main repo is a good entry point for basically all of those, and is our main organization point for issues and also projects. The project boards, as a little bit of a legacy, are still in the Kinfolk org. Those are going to be moved to the Flatcar org soon. If you're more an interactive person, please use metrics and drop along and have a chat. And of course, we're very interested in your feedback, your questions for Flatcar specifically, and even generally how you feel about the Flatcar community and how we can help you to be part of our community and to grow the whole thing. Which brings us to our closing part, Q&A and discussions. So any questions? I know there's a raise your hand feature, but I only see raised hands if I stop my presentation. I see.
Sorry.
That's all right. No, I see Jorge. Yeah, what's your question?
Just so I make sure I didn't mishear, your very first slide when we're talking about LTS and stuff, you said that that was available in source. Are you saying that the channel will be available free to use for everyone, or do you need a subscription?
So in general, the features the channel provides, not the longevity, but some of the special sauce that we only provide in LTS images will be available and merged to the community images. We'll also cut the new LTS, but we don't have a good future of the whole LTS concept in general just yet. There's, of course, technical challenges, and then there's organizational challenges. The technical challenges are up to the team. The organizational ones are for Andy to answer. But as far as I understand, we don't have anything concrete to announce yet.
Okay.
We do take note of your interest, though. Like you've brought it up a number of times in the call, and that's very, very good input for us. Okay.
Yeah, I was just wondering, hey, did you just announce everything is free? And I was like, whoa, that made my day. But I also get that you gotta, eat.
All right, Ed.
Yeah, knowing the world situation, I know this may be a little bit hard to plan for, but I did see a notice of a spring 2022 event for All Systems Go. Is that still tentative, or I don't know what the planning process looks like there.
That's an interesting question. I think the only person to be able to answer this is Ashish. Are you still there? And can you?
Yeah, actually ASG event is postponed to the next year. So we will announce the date and the venue later in the following couple of months.
But next year, Ashish, being 2022. So yeah. we are looking at spring 2022, but we haven't got firm dates.
Yeah.
But yes, we are working towards that. And we are hopeful it will be in person.
It's going into the budget, never in person or remote. It's going into the budget, and I'll just have to find a good source for beer and mate. So
we're also organizing Cloud Native Rejects around KubeCon North America in Los Angeles, both in person and remote.
Yeah.
Cool, folks. Any more questions? Any other questions? All right, then. We are only slightly over time. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Thanks for all of the contributions to this call. And see you either to the planning in 2 weeks or to the new community call in a month. Bye, folks.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
All right, have a
Bye.
good one. Thanks for being here, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you all.